Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Uh, I've been with Racine for, this is my 16th year. I started out as a reading specialist at an elementary school working with our most struggling readers in K through 5. And then I did become the district reading specialist about 8 years ago as a assistant director of curriculum and instruction. And now as my role as deputy chief, I'm still overseeing all things literacy, whether that be early literacy that we're going to be talking about today, all the way up into high school English courses, as well as our MLSS or our RTI systems. So any of our interventions and gifted programs as well.
Wow. And so, I mean, aside from being loyal to Racine, um, what kind of got you involved in literacy and how did you start putting attention towards science and reading?
I think it really did start with my teacher training program. I know in the news and in the media, we are reading that one of the things that really needs to change is the way that how teaching reading is taught in pre-prep programs. But I was fortunate. I went to Cardinal Stritch University for my teaching certification, and they really did focus on science of reading back then. So I was already exposed to all of these teachings. That is my foundation of knowledge. And when I got my first teaching job, it was not anything what I learned in school. And there wasn't a ton of direction for me either. And I recognized I was working with, students who were 3-4 years behind, fifth graders that were still reading at a first grade level. And am I prepared? What are the supports that I need in order to, grow my students to where they needed to be successful? And that wasn't really there. So I didn't want anybody to feel the way I felt. So even as a teacher, I started kind of, talking to others and finding out if they were in the same boat as me. And I found that a lot were. And the more we talked and we had commonalities and what supports we felt we needed in order to reach our students, we just started creating things on our own. We started writing grants. We started reading books. We started having professional book clubs. And we always had supportive principals that would, encourage others to join us and to support kind of our movement. And the more results we got, of course, the more interest we got from other folks. And it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to be in a situation where if you professionally get excited about something, then, the leadership allows you to continue to pursue that and kind of see the fruits of that labor. But I think in the conversations you and I have had and the materials you sent over, one of the most interesting things about the work and preparation you're doing is really thinking carefully about how to engage the community in this work, but also how to coach parents in preparing kids to be taught, reading in schools. And so maybe can you talk a little bit about how that came about and why you see that being such an important component of preparing for the implementation of science reading as part of the instructional strategy?
I think it mainly came about because this is such a heated topic in the media. So we knew that we had a lot of informed families that were already contacting us and saying, I heard about this. Are you doing damage to my students? Things like that, because some of this is very sensationalized that, we're doing a lot of harm by not using these practices. So we knew we had to move quickly, and we can't move quickly without having a partnership with the stakeholders involved. So we did take an all hands on deck approach, and any communication that we were going to be giving to our staff, we knew we had to put in non-teacher speak and connect with the community, the families, as well as other community partners as the reason why we were changing so quickly. Because we had just previously adopted, maybe 3 years prior. So, the Board of Education was really shocked too. Like, why are you changing so suddenly? So we had to pare down the research and the media releases and things like that to show everybody involved, you're going to see some swift changes. Here's why, and here's what it's going to look like.
I just wanted to commend you guys on the language that you used on the website, because I thought that it was really well balanced in terms of, the science around the reading and the other approaches that people might be familiar with. And, it wasn't like taking a polarized stance. And I'm sure it wasn't easy wordsmithing stuff like that, but I thought that it was a nice way to navigate the conversation for family.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That we were very intentional on trying not to polarize things, partly because many of the people that worked on this have been in education, and we do usually see a wide pendulum swing. And we know that as more and more information comes out, there are many things that science of reading as it stands right now could look different in 2 years down the road. So we didn't want to take the same approach as a lot of the mass media outlets were, that the sky is falling and all of these things are really damaging, because there are practices that we continue to do that are part of science of reading. So not everything is just thrown out. Here are things that we're going to change. We're going to be more intentional about. We're going to adopt materials on. We're going to shift our language around, but there's no reason to panic. We just need to shift quickly. We know more now, so we'll do better.
I'm talking to districts about implementing well. I do talk to them about 3 things that I'm hoping that you will cover, particularly around parent development and engagement in education. So the first is just, how do we get the mindsets of the parents in the right way? And I think I really enjoyed the tools that you're providing parents as they prepare their children and support them. How parents can collaborate and learn from each other in this environment, because there is a lot of noise in the space, and trying to filter what is actual, facts and scientific versus, what's opinion based is really hard these days. And then I think third, just touching upon the systems that are necessary, because this isn't something that just gets, implemented over 3 months. It's something that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice for educators to develop their skill too. So maybe if we could just start by mindsets, how do we get the community in the right mindset? And I think some of the things that you're doing to make it kind of natural language education of the things are pretty right on point, but are there other things you're finding that improve mindset with the community?
I think having them involved in decision making from the beginning is key. This sometimes tends to go into or overlap into like a dyslexia kind of space. And so we did have a lot of students, families that do struggle with dyslexia, and they wanted to be a part of this. But we also have systems and structures built within our school district where we have parent ambassador groups. We also tapped into like our PTOs, PTAs, anybody who wanted to know more, come be a part of this and help us, give us ideas as to where we should be going in the community. What are the modes of communication that are most often utilized by our community? So instead of having a plan and just presenting it to the community, we actually utilized them in our planning process, which I think helped tremendously.
So I also noticed that you have like reading out loud materials that parents can use with their kids and such. Do you feel like those materials are actually being utilized by your families?
Oh, yes. We track our clicks and all of our data. We do have parent surveys. So they are being utilized. Not, of course, as much as we want. We are still adding to it constantly. So it is something that we're pushing out all the time, that we remind our parent ambassadors at each school to, continue to push and talk about so that families feel equipped to work with their children at home. We do have some families that struggle themselves with literacy, and although they want to help and do anything possible, they don't always feel that they're qualified to do that. So we have had some instances where we've had some more personalized or intimate trainings with those families. Those are usually identified by a school. And when those come, then a small group of us gets together. They might have some questions in the beginning for us. How can we do this? What are some materials? Where can I get some materials? And we give them all of that in that small group session where they're not as, I think, nervous maybe to speak up, that a larger communication tool like a town hall or a press release, where they might not want to respond in something large. So we really have many different avenues, not just the website. We have parent ambassadors, we have parent university options as well. So that's not just around early literacy. We have that around many, many, many initiatives in the district. But if a family is well versed in our parent university system, they're going to know that that's an option. We do have a lot of Title I schools, and they have a lot of family nights. So we do encourage and send some information and templates and options for working with families when they do literacy nights, so they can continue with the same message that the district is having. And so that we don't want to confuse the parents and give them, a different idea of how massive this shift is and how capable they are to support their children, because they really, really are.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool when I was checking out the website. It was pretty differentiated by age group, and then there was nice scaffolding for parents if you felt comfortable with the materials, and you could do it this way. If you didn't feel comfortable, like here's kind of a simpler path that you could take. I didn't know about the additional workshops that you provide, which kind of leads me into the second point I like to make around just the ability to have that safe space, or the psychologically safe space where you could share and learn and push. And so how do you get people to put the time and attend those types of things? Because I'm sure that's pretty much voluntary to participate in those.
It is. So I would give a few tips for that. Offer them at different parts of the day, because our families do work different shifts. We always provide childcare. We always provide food. We normally provide something they're going to leave with too, whether that be books or some sort of literacy activities. They're going to leave with something in their hands that they can implement right away. You mentioned differentiated. A lot of our families have multi-age children in the house. So if they need to take 4 different levels of something, go ahead, please take 4 different levels. We'll support you in all of those things. So that, I think, has been most helpful. Since COVID, I think adding remote options is also really helpful. So we repeat sessions and we repeat information, but it's really just so we're making sure that we're meeting the needs of our community and our families.
Yep, that's great. And I guess the third piece that I often like to talk about is around just the resilient systems. And I think that a lot of times districts implement these kinds of support systems for the community, and then the first year is great that it trickles down a little bit, and the third year it trickles down. And so how can we maintain these really great support systems for the community, other than just saying we're going to keep on doing them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So our journey started over COVID, and the draw to use ESSER funds was really high. But the more we did use some ESSER funds to supplement some of this work, but it wasn't in any of our community work. So we made sure that we used existing dollars whether that be Title IV dollars, Title I dollars, already dollars that were allocated for our family and community engagement office. We reworked things so that some of those systems and structures are going to stay because they're natural budget line items. So that did mean we had to make decisions on what was working and what was popular, and what wasn't. And I think that's hard because you are competing in a system that has a lot of needs. But fortunately, because this is so, I would say, like, widely known by families now because it's talked about so much, that most people understood that this had to take a front seat, at least for now. One other thing that was critical, though, we built this into our 5-year strategic plan. So we just started a new strategic plan for the district this school year, and early literacy is one of our 5 main goals, which means our system has reorganized and shifted to pay more attention and create more solid systems around prevention in literacy. So that will help at least for 5 years. And we've come to find here, I have been here for a long time, but after 5 years, it really does seem like it's business as usual for the most part. People become used to that. They know where to go. The community knows who to talk to more often. They can recall things for previous years. So we really are kind of banking on just our experience over the years with what we've rolled out, that type of reaction will come.
So kind of to wrap up here, I think, as so many states have new mandates to implement science reading by, 24, districts are scrambling, and, sometimes they're just putting plans together just to feed the work to the teachers in the classrooms, and, not much is getting out to the community. So, now having done this for a bit, what kind of tips would you have given yourself now that you know what you've done, and what is needed to be done, so that other people can not go through the same kind of mistakes that are, challenges that you might have experienced, so that they could already anticipate some of the things that might be headed their way?
I would say don't neglect other partners in your community that can be of service, not only in support, but also in communication. So your local library, your local, if you have any tutoring agencies or anything like that, make sure that you're reaching out to them and collaborating with them so they know what's coming. I know that we're in kind of a time crunch. Like you had said, there's some legalities in some states that this has to be done in a very fast timeline. And if you're in a larger district or, medium-sized district like us, we're around a little over 16,000 students, doing something in a tight time frame is very challenging. So get people on board to help you. And if that means you have to take the time up front to reach out to other stakeholders that you've collaborated with in other capacities, do that, because more often than not, community members or parent advocates, they're on board and ready and willing to help as much as they possibly can. That's one thing I would suggest.
That's a really great point, because, let's say some sort of tutoring group has like a different philosophy, and they're still promoting a different way that's incongruent with what the district's doing, and then it creates that friction. Right. And so making sure that everyone's invested and aligned in the core strategy that the district's offering is so smart. And I don't think I thought about that, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for making the time. I think, these are really great tips for the audience here. And, as the districts we work with start thinking about implementing science or reading, I think it's so crucial, just hearing the stories that you've provided today, so crucial that they engage the community stakeholders, and even like start preparing the students and parents early before they even start coming to the district. So thank you so much for these incredible tips.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.